This is the Plagmanrules Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome. It's Friday, October 20th. Hard to believe that we're this far into the month of October already, but here we are, and we've got quite a few number of topics to talk about here today. Most of them are actually going to be pretty short. The first thing I'm going to talk about, and this will take up a little bit of time today, is a lot of the female characters at Marvel, a lot of the superheroes, want their own standalone film, and evidently, at least by some reports, Kevin Feige is kind of caving in, so I wanted to just weigh in on that quickly. We've also got, and it did just drop after I had finished everything on Monday for the show, but the Black Panther, its second trailers. We'll talk about that a little bit. Also, Thor Ragnarok. We finally got official reviews. The early screenings began a while ago, but now the official reviews are up, so I'll mention that briefly. And one more thing. Solo, a Star Wars story. The title has been revealed for the standalone Han Solo movie, so I'll briefly touch up on that. Okay, let's get this party started with every female character who's in the Marvel movies, at least the ones that are superheroes. So we're talking Black Widow here, we're talking Scarlet Witch, we're talking Wasp, we're talking Tessa Thompson's character in the new Thor film Valkyrie, and a few others in there. Not all of them are coming to mind right now, but there's, 5 or 6 of them that are in the universe right now that are doing their own kind of parts in each movie. They're supporting characters and so on and so forth. So the big thing was, and I think this came out late last week, so all the female actresses went up to Kevin Feige and kind of on a tap the shoulder kind of moment said, hey, we got all these films with standalone characters and all that with all the guys, and then we get all these team up movies and they're mostly guys. So where's our movie? And at least by the way it was reported like that, at first I was kind of like, where's your movie? What kind of attitude you got there? And I kind of looked at it negatively at first, but then I thought about it and I'm like, well, if we did actually live in a Hollywood system that was fair with the races and fair with the genders and everything, we probably would have already gotten a movie with all these characters. A couple more, like Gamora and Captain Marvel, or a couple more. I didn't think of them before, but I want to mention them. So we've got, probably 6 or 7 characters there that you can do kind of a crossover event with and make it like a female version of the Avengers. So, like I said, and I'm not just trying to cover my ass here because I might say something that offends people, but if we were living in a fair Hollywood system, this would have happened already. But we don't. We live in a very male-dominated Hollywood system, and it's been that way pretty much since day one and has not really changed much. So, I would say, if they made one, I'd be all for it. You've got a lot of great characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now, all their different personalities interacting, and all their different powers, and all their different specialties. It would make for a very interesting film, and a very nice crossover event where you have all these different characters from all these different backgrounds meeting up and coming up against a common threat. And that all sounds good, but here's the thing. Are you going to do it for the sake of doing it? Or are you going to come up with a story that actually unites these characters together? Because when we look at all the previous Marvel films and what really brought all these crossover films like The Avengers, Age of Ultron, and Infinity War, alongside stuff like Civil War and a couple of the other ones lately, the reason that they were coming together was because the story required their presence, because they were written in, and for the most part, it's always felt natural. Yes, it would feel natural that Tony Stark would want to intervene when the events of Captain America Civil War at the beginning of the film happen. Yes, it feels organic when all the Avengers come together to take on the Chitauri army at the end of the Avengers. It makes sense, and the story around it, with all the Infinity Stones and everything, even though, they're pretty much the biggest MacGuffin in film history, it made sense, and it was an organic reason for all these characters to come together and fight evil on screen, or each other in the event of Captain America Civil War. So that's what makes those films work. It's less with a majority of them being guys. And I get the feeling that, at least the way that it was phrased, and of course every article is written differently, but at least from the sense I was getting, it was like, hey, put us in a movie. Don't matter about the story, doesn't matter, just put us in a movie. And if they're taking that approach, this could be a disastrous mistake. Because seriously, like I said, everything pretty much that's happened so far in the Marvel Universe has worked organically, and it's worked and it's made sense. To bring all these characters together for the sake of bringing them together and saying, now we have this interconnected film with all the female characters. Okay, that's great, but you gotta have a story there if you want it to be more than that. And I feel, personally, if you're going to do this, make it something substantial. Make it something that sends a message. And I think that's what they're really doing here. They're trying to send a message by saying, hey, not all of our Marvel films have to be centered on males. And I agree, they don't all have to be. And it's kind of like we're getting the Captain Marvel film, it's close to 2 years from now, but it's overdue, I think, for a standalone female film. And of course, Wonder Woman we just got, so it's very much a topical sense right now. But I agree again with their statement and their sentiment of where's all the characters coming together and actually doing something on screen and not having to rely on all of the male characters. But again, my point is do it with a story that makes sense. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it and say, haha, now we've got it. That's my big point here is I am fine and I'm actually in favor of doing this, but we just need a story that works. And we can't have that really throwaway kind of idea of, oh, it just so happens that all the boys are out of town, or, oh, it just so happens that all the boys are in prison. We need something else. We need something that works. And right now, I'm just not thinking of any ideas that would bring all these vastly different characters who come from very different points of view, very different locations, and all sorts of different backgrounds. I can't really think of any organic film that fits in the universe that's going to actually bring them all together. And I know over at Marvel, they are all about sticking with that universe and not doing one-shot movies that don't bring anything new to the table. They are all about making each film count and making sure that every dollar you spend on seeing the movie is worth it because it's going to connect to something later and so on and so forth, or it's wrapping things up. You get what I mean? I'm not doubting them. I think if they can come up with that story that's great and a good through line that brings them all together and makes sense, then yes, that could definitely be a big, powerful statement to Hollywood and also be a very entertaining film and a very theatrical experience. But if you're going to do it just to say, we've got all our females together, what you going to do about it? That really is just asking for trouble, and it's probably going to be one of the worst reviewed films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far. And we're going to get into it later, but the newest one that's coming out has, at least by the early standards, some of the best reviews so far. So definitely in that sense of, hey, if we're coming off of these great films, because I know some of them lately have been okay, but like Spider-Man Homecoming for me has been the best Marvel film they've done so far in the universe. Captain America Civil War was fantastic. Thor looks fantastic. Hopefully, if Infinity War pans out, that's going to be great. Black Panther, everything looks like it's working great. It's going to be a shame if we have all this build-up, all this great stuff, and all these great films, and then the first thing they do after that, or one of the first things, I would assume they would try to fast-track this and get it out as soon as they could. But it'd be a shame to come off of all that greatness and then have a standalone movie with all the different female characters coming together, but just having nothing at the core other than, hey, here's all the females bunched together. You gotta have something that fits, you gotta have something that works. Okay, so we kind of alluded to it earlier, but Black Panther, we had the second trailer come out on Monday, kind of out of nowhere, pretty much, and I'll tell you what, I actually think I liked the first trailer for this better, and I'm probably the only guy who has that opinion, but still, this is a good trailer. It's one, I've only seen it once since it came out on Monday, so it's not like it stuck out with me like the first trailer did, but it's got really good scenes, and I think we're getting in a few months what could be one of the better Marvel movies we've had in recent times, because like I mentioned, Homecoming was the best they've done, Civil War was terrific. For me, Doctor Strange and Guardians 2 had strengths, but they weren't particularly the most memorable of the recent films. So it's kind of like they're at this point now where, yeah, we're kind of waiting for the big punch, which is going to be Infinity War here in, 7 months? But up until then, yeah, you can definitely come up with some very great films. And Black Panther, at least from the second trailer, continues to show that it does look like it's going to be a great one. Plus, we've got all these different colors in the film. It's a very nice color paletted film with all those different things and all the Wakanda settings. Those all look really cool. All the tech looks really cool. All the stuff when they introduced all the different colored Black Panther suits, or at least 2 of the different colors, those looked really neat. And I especially liked how it was pretty much all focused on Chadwick Boseman. They weren't too focused on bringing on who the villain is or bringing on all these different elements of what the film's going to be. Instead, they're just saying, well, it's called Black Panther. Let's show Black Panther, at least in this trailer. Now, obviously, when we get into the movie, I'm sure there's going to be a good amount of backstory with the villain. So, yeah, I'm excited for this. I don't know if I'm excited as everybody else is, but, with Ryan Coogler behind the scenes there, directing this, and it's part of the Marvel Universe, I think it's going to be good. And the second trailer definitely keeps my enthusiasm up, even if it doesn't boost it like it did for everybody else. Okay, so the last bit of Marvel news we have here, Thor Ragnarok. It doesn't come out for a couple weeks here in the States. It comes out actually over in most of the European countries next Friday, I believe, or Wednesday, somewhere in there. I've read a couple different dates. So it's coming up sometime next week in some of the European countries. Those lucky bastards get to see it first. But this is one where the trailers, I think, have been consistently getting better and better. And my excitement for the film was already off to a good start because they had all the great cast members. They had all these different ideas I've heard about that are like, damn, that sounds like a really fun movie. And at least by the early reviews, it's 97% on Rotten Tomatoes at this point. And I think a lot of the praise has been going toward the director, Taika Waititi, for bringing in something that really mixes up the mythology of what we've gotten so far in the Marvel Universe and bringing in some fresh ideas, cool new characters that really light up the screen, and a very good idea for a story in the film that does have stakes, I've heard. So we'll see. Maybe we'll have some characters dying, maybe some characters get into some pretty big trouble. We'll see what happens here. But again, this is one the trailers have consistently been fantastic. They've been hilarious. There was actually a clip that came out a couple weeks ago. I didn't mention it, but it's the one where they're in the big gladiatorial match with Thor and Hulk. There's a part where Thor looks up into the audience because Loki's there and he says, "Hey Loki, remember this guy?" And it's the Hulk. The Hulk looks up to him and Loki just looks like he's ready to piss his pants. That's a nice callback to the first Avengers movie. So that made me laugh very hard. And Tom Hiddleston is just such an instant classic as an actor, isn't he? And he is very much at home in this part. So it's going to be great to see all these characters back together. And these early reviews, again, have me very excited to see what this one's going to be all about. Okay, so that's going to be all on that. Now we'll move into the world of Star Wars, where Solo, a Star Wars story, has been the official title for the upcoming standalone Han Solo movie. And really, I don't think I have too much to say about this one. I mean, the title is Solo, a Star Wars story. I can't imagine what else it could have been. Were they going to call it Han Solo's Secret of Nim? Or, I'm just saying something. But were they going to have some of these dumb subtitles on or something? I didn't think so, and I didn't really expect that. And I think just Solo, a Star Wars story, works. Now, of course, we've gotten all these bedwetting, crying fan babies who've been saying that the Star Wars story part doesn't work. I disagree with this. Now, I can kind of get their sentiment a little bit here because, yeah, a Star Wars story can sound a little kiddish, but at the same time, I think Star Wars anthology just sounded rough when it came out of your mouth. It was like, a Star Wars story flows. Star Wars anthology, for me, it just doesn't flow as well. It's just for me, personally. If you like it, then yeah, good on you, but I disagree. I think a Star Wars story fits better. And plus, at the same time, if you have your title as Star Wars Anthology, well then it doesn't matter what the rest of the anthology is. All that people are going to see is Star Wars, and they're going to think, oh, so it's the next thing, isn't it? But then anthology, which I guess a study revealed not everybody got what they meant by anthology. It's not that hard a word, but anyways. That's another thing too. I think if you have anthology out there after Star Wars at the front of the title, that distracts from what the actual subtitle was. So in this case, we get Solo, a Star Wars story. So they'll see Solo first, because that'll be, like it was presumably in Rogue One's thing, was Rogue One was the big part, like on a poster is what I mean here. Rogue One was in the biggest lettering, and then a Star Wars story was smaller underneath it. And I think if they use that same kind of idea here with Solo, a Star Wars story, there's not too many other things you can think of in that case. I think Han Solo is just such a known character, such a known term. It's kind of hard to not think of anything else other than Star Wars. So when it just says Solo, and then beneath it in small letterings, a Star Wars story, I think that's going to catch people's attention more. They're going to realize, oh, okay, well, obviously Han Solo died in episode 7, so it's not set in the current timeline of episode 7, 8, and 9. Okay, and plus, if they're smart, they'll put a picture of Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo on the poster as well. They're not going to just have the words on the poster, let's assume. So if that was the case and they see, oh, well, it's not Harrison Ford, bam, that's so easy to tell where we're at in time. Now, I know there were some people that were still confused when Rogue One came out as far as, oh, so why are they recasting Rey? And I know it's kind of a joke, but still, there were some people who were genuinely confused, including in my personal life, there were some people that asked me, hey, so when did episode 8 come out? And I'm like, it's not out yet. And they're like, well, there was this one that came out last year, and I see it's on Netflix, and I'm like, that's not episode 8. And they're like, oh, really? It's a serious thing. It happens. People were confused. And I do think that, yeah, all of us who are in the know on this and who keep up on Star Wars news and all the other movie news, we know what's happening. We know what's going on here. But some of the common consumers who see, maybe 2 or 3, 4 movies a year and who are not necessarily plugged in like we are, they can get a little confused. And I think Disney can do a better job of causing some of that confusion to go away. And at least with Rogue One, I think they definitely tried. Like that last poster and the last trailers and stuff that came out like in the last couple months leading up to Rogue One, when they do show Darth Vader on the poster and the Death Star is a big thing and all that, I thought that was a good way to let your audience know, hey, if you're confused as far as is this episode 8 or not, well, Darth Vader's there, and he's not in the other ones, like episode 7, because he's dead, so it's not going to be following episode 7. I think that was a good way to do it there, and hopefully, yeah, they do the same thing again with this Han Solo film, where, yeah, they have a picture of young Han Solo as played by Alden Ehrenreich, and you don't mention Harrison Ford, and you don't have a picture of Harrison Ford or anything stupid like that, then I think audiences will know what's up. All right, so that's all I got for today's edition of the Plagmanrules Podcast. First of all, I do have on the channel as well Oscars at a Glance. We're keeping up on that, and I have not done a video in a while. I'm going to be working on that here very shortly. That should be up hopefully by the end of the weekend. Just kind of an October update. We'll talk about a couple of things, like the New York Film Festival just wrapped up on Sunday, so we'll talk about what tanked there, what went well there, and a couple other things. I'll discuss a few early points as far as the technical categories. We'll also discuss some kind of changes I've made in some of the top categories. And also, I'm going to talk a little bit about Netflix and how Netflix might play into this year. I've mentioned it a little bit before, I think in a couple of different posts before, but I'll maybe mention it again here. So I'll definitely be doing that over the weekend here. And I'll try to get it up by the end of the weekend so everybody can see it there, because we do have some major changes to talk about. And of course, another thing too, I mentioned it on the podcast, I think it was a week or two ago, but everything that happened with Harvey Weinstein I think it's going to make an impact on the race this year. So I'll mention what impact that's going to make, because the Weinstein Company does have a few films that could get some Oscar love. Like Wind River, for me especially, is one of my favorite films of the year still. I'm hoping that one does not get hurt by the fact that it was just distributed by Weinstein Company. So we'll get into that a little bit in the video as well. That's a little tidbit I'll give to you there. But that's something I very much want to get into, and I might get a little heated about it, just to give you a heads up there. All right, otherwise, we'll be back on Monday with a new version of the podcast talking about the weekend box office. We got 4 or 5 new releases coming out, so it's going to be a busy one at the box office here. And we'll see what else happens over the weekend. All right, until then, this has been the Plagmanrules Podcast.